Hi! If you're wondering why I'm looking to my right all the time, or your left, or whatever it is, it's just because my lovely elderly dog's just over there. She may make an entrance by falling off the couch at some point. She's not very sturdy on her feet. How are we doing? Sorry I've left it to the last minute to put my advert out saying it's on. It's just, it genuinely today, it's been blink and you miss it. I'm still wearing my gym gear from this morning because you know when you just have one of those days where you come out from doing one thing and then you've just had no time at all, right up until now. Pete was having a panic attack just going, I don't know how to get all this set up. We've got so much to do because we only had like 5 minutes. So apologies. There's also going to be quite a lot of noise at some points because my son has got his friends in the back garden and there'll be definitely somebody coming in the door shortly because my son's gone to the shop to get some stuff. So apologies if there's like lots of dogs yapping because I have little yappy dogs as well as a big dog. I have too many animals. I probably should be on the My Secret Hoarder program and it would just be me surrounded with a million animals. How are you all doing, everybody? We're getting closer to whatever that day is. Is it Freedom Day or whatever it is? Some ridiculous title. So I'm hoping that some of you are feeling that there is some kind of end in sight, albeit that there's always these scariants everywhere, but that's just the nature of a virus. I keep wanting to say that to people. I had the most hysterical conversation with somebody last night on the radio. It was quite unbelievable because it really made me take a step back and go, wow, some people are just really aggressive and, as I said, hysterical around this whole vax, unvax and all of this. And she basically said that she wouldn't let anybody into her house or come to parties with her unless they basically had the vaccine. And at the end of the conversation, I thought, well, I won't have it just not to come round your house because you terrified me. But I think we've all got to just kind of calm down, haven't we? And start being more compassionate towards each other. Like, we really have to think about how to be more compassionate to one another. It's as simple as that. Without compassion, there is really no humanity, is there? Have I frozen on screen there, Pete? I think I have a little bit. I can see that there's like some weirdness going on, so apologies if it is. I can't see the comments at the side at the moment.
It's Facebook.
Is it going to come up though, the comments? Can you kind of let me know?
I'll have to go on to my phone.
Unbelievable, guys. Literally.
This computer.
This computer's just not working at the moment. So I've got some questions in. Oh, it's there! Like magic. How wonderful that is. Could you please go up to the top so I can say hiya? Right, hi everybody, lovely to see you. By the way, thank you everybody for all of your lovely messages. Last Thursday night, it was the early hours of Friday morning, my son had gone out on his moped to meet his friend at Pure Gym because his friend started some holidays with working shifts. So he has to work with his dad, which means that he can only go on quite late. So we went to the gym about 11 o'clock in the evening to do a couple of hours workout because my son manages his mental health. My younger one is 16. Mainly through exercise, if I'm honest. It's been a really horrible time for young people, hasn't it? And it's been a really terrible time for him in the last 2 years because of everything that you guys know about. And yeah, he came out, was on his moped. These guys drove around a cornered him. Then they assaulted him and stole his moped. And then, unfortunately, my son was just like in such kind of shock. He rang the police and dealt with it. But he walked all the way home on his own, just feeling like he'd failed me because he'd been attacked and had his moped taken. Anyway, I did drive around in the car for a few hours, shall we say, afterwards, hoping that I'd meet the offender, but I didn't find them. But the police did, which I like to think is probably better for the offender than if I'd found them. But he's okay. Thanks for asking. It's horrible. Horrible when you have a child in distress. Horrible when you get a victim of crime, but he's fine. His bike isn't fine. We've just collected it today and it's been done in a bit, but he's alive and that's all that matters. Apparently 2 career criminals did it, so he's very lucky that he's got away so lightly, I suppose. But it happens to the best of us, doesn't it? You just go about your day and things can go wrong and you just got to manage it. So with him at the moment, it's just managing trauma. I think we've all got to do that. I think everybody can relate to trauma at the moment. And I spoke to the police officer and he said that in the evening that my son was attacked, 151 separate incidents of crime had happened, mostly domestic. So that really concerns me because it means that domestic abuse is just so massively on the rise, and we know that, but we're not having those conversations that we need to be having right now. So yes, thanks for asking. He's fine, it'll be okay. After the few years we've had, we can manage it. Oh, love your YouTube work. What TV stuff have you done? Anything on Netflix? Oh, there probably is. I've done 100 crime shows, but Killer in My Family, Killer Next Door, Meet, Marry, Murder, Darkest Taboos, loads, all different types. People Watchers was my first one many years ago, but that was just completely different. That was spoof tricks, psychology, it was great. But you can probably Google and find. I don't watch any of the things I do, so that'll be unhelpful. But apparently quite a lot of the time they do repeat. So if you go on IMBD, a lot of the time they have lists of things that people have done. Evening, Emma. I'm going through therapy for childhood sexual abuse, which has left me with complex PTSD. I've had about 10 sessions and I've now started feeling more interested in sex. This is not a feeling I'm acting on with my husband, as feeling like this is making me feel full of shame, guilt, and feeling disgusted in myself. It's also given me terrible visual and feeling flashbacks that are lasting days. Any advice on how I can deal with this? Thanks for your time. So you've had about 10 sessions and now you've started feeling more interested in sex, which is brilliant. So as a sexual abuse survivor, one of the very common threads is that people feel that to have sex, particularly when they have sex in a loving relationship, is to almost betray the love, because sex is so interspersed with these horrible feelings. And obviously you're in a relationship, you know, you want to have sex with your partner, you obviously had sex with your partner for a period of time. But what we find with sexual abuse is a lot of people who, when they first get together with somebody, are fine about having sex because they feel like it still fits that being used state. I'm not saying that when we get into a first relationship with somebody or a new relationship with somebody, we want to be used. I'm saying it's more that there's not the love, and it's more that there is that kind of physicality. It's a primal experience. But then love creeps in, and then love is pure. So people who've been sexually abused obviously start having that challenge of, well, if love is pure, I should keep it separate from sex, which is bad and disgusting and shameful. And then this can cause a real problem where loving relationships become sexless because the individual who's struggling with their own abuse doesn't want to contaminate the love that they have, the purity and sanctity of that love, with sex. So when you're doing therapy, the feelings that you're experiencing are firstly expected. So of course, the minute you start getting back interested in sex with your partner, which is brilliant because it means you're starting that survival journey, as in fully overcoming it, where no abuser has any power over you or your body any longer, where you can embrace your body, when you can embrace your sexual behavior, when you can embrace your joy and adult play, where you don't have to feel bad about that. It has to go through that state of where you also acknowledge what brought you to that point. And what brought you to that point is this trauma that isn't yours to hold, and this shame that wasn't yours to carry. But you almost need to be able to explore that so that you can hand it back. Because the shame and the guilt that you feel, it doesn't belong to you, which is why it's been difficult to manage. You want to own it, but you didn't create it. And again, makes sense. When we've been made to feel really vulnerable, when we've had horrible things happen to us, it's almost understandable of the brain to say, okay, well, how do we take some accountability for this so we can prevent it happening elsewhere? And in normal circumstances, that would be helpful. In normal circumstances, such as I crashed my car today, okay, what can I look at about my driving that may have resulted in a better outcome for me? But when it comes down to sexual abuse, you can't do that. There is no alternative possibility. It's unfortunately bad luck and being in the wake and presence of a sexual predator. So the shame and guilt that you're trying to control by saying, well, I must deserve this to some degree, I must have asked for it to some degree, you know, all that bullshit that goes on in your head, it's not yours to hold. So starting to feel sexual, it's going to trigger some of those feelings because you associate it with the really negative sexual experiences. Whereas what we want to do now is to take that sexual feeling and thinking, God, actually, I think my husband's hot and I think I want to have sex with him. It's like That's a light, beautiful, pure feeling. It's a feeling of connection and synergy and synchronicity and of beauty. And when you start seeing and feeling and visualizing and affirming it that way, even using words that way, then suddenly you can compartmentalize what you consider the bad abusive experiences of sexual experience and the good and pure. And when I say good and pure, I'm not saying for 1 minute that your sex life should be vanilla. You should be able to do whatever you like and however you like it, whether that's role play, a bit of BDSM, it doesn't matter, as much machinery as you can bring in, whatever makes you feel good and makes your body feel good. So I would definitely see it as a good thing. I would also take that guilt and shame back to therapy. You need to be working through it. And the other thing that I'd draw your attention to that you can look up, or maybe Pete, you could just Google it and pop a link in.
What's that?
Sensate focus. So when we work in relational therapy, in particular people who've got issues around libido or sex, or even, let's say, erectile dysfunction, where pressure becomes part of the play, we often bring people back to a thing called sensate focus. It's non-intimate massage. So the job is for you both to kind of enjoy each other's body without the pressure of having sex. And underpinning all of this has to be awesome, constant, concrete conversation and communication with your other half. Bring them into this. This is not just your journey, this is their journey. They have to walk the way they're walking with you by your side. They have to. So get them involved in it as well. That would really help as well. My child is distressed. She's suffering with anorexia. Any advice? How old is your daughter? Can you put that on if possible? Anorexia is a really serious eating disorder. I'm sure all of you understand what anorexia is. It's classified by mostly starvation, limiting amounts of food, often accompanied with lots of exercise. So it depends which part of the cycle you're in right now. So the earlier that we get your eating disorder dealt with for your daughter, the better it will be for her, because the deeper that you get entrenched in any habit, understandably, the more powerful and challenging it is when it comes down to breaking it. You can't necessarily do it by yourself. I think that's one of the big struggles that a lot of people have when they see a child who has an eating disorder. You kind of think to yourself, what have I done wrong? What do I need to do to change it? And it's trying to be a bit more strategic than that. There's no point blaming yourself, because people develop eating disorders for a whole heap of reasons. Yes, there are people who will say, well, it's because they're perfectionistic, or there's too much pressure and all these things. But no, I mean, equally, I can tell you that I've worked with people with anorexia from the most disorganized backgrounds who don't have any perfectionistic instinct or traits. It just comes down sometimes to genetics and environment and triggers. The past 12 to 18 months has been hideous for kids. We have demobilized pretty much everything about their lives that had meaning. We've taken their education, we've taken their peers, we've sat them in front of screens for days on end. We've given them unrealistic expectations that they should be able to manage their own academia at home. We've traumatized them through the media. We've consistently ignored everything that makes their lives human children. And then if you add to that problems around the traumatization that she might have carried, and also this might have been going on for a while, that is a cooking pot of neuroses right there, and lots of people will be having a similar experience to you, so don't feel that you've done anything wrong, that your daughter is struggling. I'd be interested to know her age, because what I tend to think is when somebody says daughter is struggling with anorexia, I'll immediately go for like the 10 to 18 year olds, but for all I know she could be in her 30s. So it comes down to, what do you need to do? Well, if she's functionally anorexic and can be dealt with on an outpatient level, you've got a few options. Obviously, there are organisations and charities that work with eating disorders. If you could look some of those up, Pete, just so that you could go down and Google some of those themselves. Beat, for example. But there are some local charities as well that you'll be able to find support work, etc. Because anorexia is one of those areas that a lot of charities kind of set up individual support groups. I would also say you need to get to the doctors and make sure that she's been referred appropriately. If she's younger, it'll be CAMS, there'll be a long waiting list, but get on it. If you can afford private therapy, I would strongly recommend trying to get some private therapy, because it's hard to manage an eating disorder on its own. How can you help when she's struggling? Well, you have to kind of be an ally without being somebody who puts yourself in a position of being an enemy. And it's hard because what you want to do as a parent is to make them eat, but then that makes it about food and not about feelings. That's how we handle a lot of the eating disorders in the UK. We make it about food and not about the feelings. My job in therapy, and a lot of people's jobs in therapy, I did my master's on eating disorders because I'm quite obsessed with the way that we fail to manage people who are unwell with their eating. I think telling our story is really powerful, whether that's with you or whether that's with a therapist. And I mean telling our story, like who we are, how we feel, what our pain feels like, looks like, what our pain experience-wise in our body physically feels, to actually go through all of those motions of real exploration. That's why therapy can be really helpful, because you can start doing that work there. She's 15, so CAMS is where you need to go, because at least if you're on the list for that, she might be able to get some help down the line. Also, can I ask you, is she severely underweight at this moment in time? You know, are you very worried about her actually being able to get through this on her own, or does she need something more specialized? Because there are units for eating disorders. I'm going to say that they should only be used if it's at a point where there might be a potential of life and death, because genuinely, home is a great place for people to heal. But the way that I would have wanted people to deal with my eating disorder when I suffered from anorexia, I would have wanted people to just be really open and honest about it. I would have rather people have said, you clearly are struggling with your eating, and I'm hoping that she's having that conversation with you, and you have developed this fear of food and what that stands for, and how can I walk on this journey with you? And that would be things like, right now, it would have sent me under having social media. I cannot tell you. Back in the day, it was bad enough that you had like pro-an groups. They still exist, where it was all about comparing your own body with somebody else's body who was in the pro-anorexia environment. So I would want to kind of shut that down as much as possible, like zone out all of the extraneous noise and zone in to the mindful self, the mindful spirit, the ability to kind of be in the moment, to kind of work with that moment, to help her to understand that anorexia is about a feelings experience. It's not about food. At the moment, she's starving herself of food because the feelings that she experiences are clearly intense enough to make her want a distraction, to make her want an opportunity to displace the pain. And that's not because you're doing anything wrong as a parent. Clearly at 15, if your child's telling you that she's got anorexia, that says what a great human being and parent you are. She's got an ally. A lot of people don't even talk about this with their children. It just continues to affect until it's really problematic. But it's helping her to understand that these are unmanageable feelings being expressed in the form of behavior. I call it the physicalization of our real experience emotionally. What's happening deep down in there? You know, food is just a way of displacing what's really going on and focusing fully on, well, if I just spend all my time doing that, you know, you can still ask me how much calories is in whatever, and I'll tell you, you know, because that's how much you spend your time. You have to help her to see that this is her using all of her positive personality traits like dedication, willingness to believe in a cause, willingness to die for a cause, absolute determination. These are traits and characteristics of an incredibly successful future if she puts them in the right places. She has to take them from the eating and she has to place them on the life that she wants, because she will get wherever she needs to go. I often say to people as well, okay, if you've got somebody who's anorexic, if you've got the money, and again, it comes down to money, things like a personal trainer, you don't want her to start getting into a position where she's over-exercising. That is a co-problem with anorexia. But if you can help get a really inspirational personal trainer who's all about health and wellness and nutrition, often you can get people to start saying, okay, why don't I become obsessed about health? Because if you're obsessed positively about being healthy, then you're not going to become in any way affected negatively, because healthy is only ever healthy. You can't become obsessed with being healthy and then it's bad for you, because you're only concentrating on healthy, like healthy nutrition, healthy workouts, healthy body. You know, for me, this body has to get me from A to B, and I have to do that in the best way possible. But storytelling for me is a big part of it. So just sitting side by side with her and just like acknowledging how challenging this is for her, acknowledging that when you see that carrot stick that she's struggling to eat, that it's not purposeful and willful choice. It's like selective mutes when they genuinely can't talk, and it's an incremental, okay, like what safe foods can we get? Because sometimes that will be really bare, you know. It might have been, for me, I could eat, you know, all bran. I could eat dry all bran, which to other people was insane, but it was my safe food. I could eat a low calorie yogurt sometimes, you know. There are things that you can do, like help her with her safe foods, and don't run from that. Just allow her to have some of that, because she needs to be able to manage her eating to some degree while starting to explore new opportunities of eating. But this has to come with that foundation and layer of her understanding that she's just using her feelings at the moment in a way that isn't going to be effective for her long term. I can't solve anorexia in this session, obviously. I mean, there are people out there who obviously dedicate their life to doing that. But what I can tell you from a personal expression of experience, I wrote about it a lot. I really concentrated on what is it like to be a healthy human? What would it be to really get up in the morning and feel that I was completely connected and dedicated to health, and help her tell her story and know not to be afraid, that there is healing and there is absolutely hope, and you don't need to live with an eating disorder for the rest of your life. You don't. It's a lie. You'll hear it all the time. It's a lie. One day, if you do it, as I'm saying, and you let her tell her story and she gets the support and she realizes that food is just fuel. It's not a treat. It's not whether it's delicious. It's not whether it's fattening. It's none of that. It's fuel. So you would never see me eat a bag of crisps. I don't have an issue with people eating a bag of crisps. Knock yourself out, eat them. Can't see the point. To me, I'll have porridge because I'll have a lot more energy from it. So my experience of food through my experience of an eating disorder is to know that one bite will always taste the same as 10 bites. So I'd only have one bite if it was something that I don't think is very good for me. And then fuel is about how do I charge this body with the super energy that it's needing to do all the things I need to do. So everybody should have that attitude to food. Everybody. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. It's that you have to see your body as the area of yourself that gets you from A to B the best it can be. And that means eating what is good for you and solid for you and soulful for you and healthy for you. It's really recharging who you are. I'm imperfect. I also like gin. So at the end of the day, no one is perfect, and I'm not. And red wine. Hi Emma, I'm struggling with binge eating disorder. Oh, a lot of eating disorder. Do you know what? I'm going to say it as well. Eating disorders have massively increased in the last 18 months. So if this is first onset for some of you and you're listening to this thinking, God, I've just thrown up my tea, please understand, when you go through periods of fear, frustration, boredom, all these things, and really all at one time, add to that traumatization, everyone is looking to pin things on something else, right? You're looking at like, okay, how can I medicate this? How can I medicate this feeling, this fear? It is completely normal for us to make some bad choices. You know, I know some people have gone like, well, you think that I've made good choices compared to you because I'm now 4 stone lighter, I've taken up a new hobby, I've learned how to cross stitch, and I've driven to mountainous areas where I just look mindfully at the mountains and think about my mental wellness and come out of this with a new job as well. Like, I get it. Some people have done that. I'm not even taking the piss because it's true. Some people have done that. I haven't. Like, genuinely, I look at myself after the past 12 months and I'm like, oh, I really need to up my game with what I wear and what I walk around in every day. Like, some days it's just like really bad. Really bad. Because I think a lot of us have felt that real like lockdown lethargy slump. So be aware that a lot of these disorders like health anxiety, OCD, eating disorders, general depression, anxiety disorder, all of these things are understandably on the rise because you've had a really shitty time. Can we just all own that instead of making people feel individually bad? because they're struggling. You're just medicating in a way that isn't working for you. So binge eating disorder, obviously, I'm going to say binge eating disorder as opposed to binge purge, which would be more bulimia. So you have periods where you just heavily binge, and you have depersonalization, derealization disorder. Now, you asked me, how can I manage these? So depersonalization, derealization, that can be linked to a lot of other things, as can eating disorders. So I would first, if I was in therapy with you, be looking at what's gone on in your past. Has there been some trauma, not just the last year, abuse? Have there been things that have meant that you have at parts in your life had to kind of compartmentalize some really challenging feelings and experiences? And if so, that can be part of depersonalization and derealization, because it fits into things like disassociation. But I will always come back to the fact that high anxiety can also lead to depersonalization and derealization. And binge eating is also a way of dealing with anxiety, dealing with high levels of difficult feelings, because you distract yourself and you fill yourself and you alter your state both chemically in your brain, because when you eat lots of sugar and fat, we have a reaction that's similar to cocaine in our brain. It kind of gives us a high. And then obviously you have like the crashing low, both of which can then exacerbate anxiety. When we have severe anxiety, and a lot of us who use things like alcohol or prescription medication or recreational drugs or eating food in ways that we know isn't good for us, a lot of us are just taking our anxiety and putting it into another thing. So it's still in us, but we've kind of distracted ourselves or medicated ourselves with something temporarily to just displace it because it's too difficult to feel. Well, depersonalization and derealization can happen when you are super anxious, and all the brain chemicals that are flooding your body, which are basically getting you ready to fight, they send all of the important adrenaline and cortisol to your extremities, so your hands, your feet, your legs. And that's because if you were going to be attacked and you lost a limb, the consequence would be that you wouldn't bleed out. It would stop you bleeding out. It would create clotting. But unfortunately for the brain, it can make the brain, because you've had all of this blood, all of this kind of adrenaline and cortisol go from your brain all the way to the extremities, you feel like you're just not in your body. It just doesn't feel like it belongs to you at all. So you can arguably feel like you're a zombie, or that you're even above yourself. You're just not connected. And it can be really unnerving. So if that's happening to you, then arguably you need to do things like mindfulness, lots of meditation, lots of going out and walking with nature, getting out in the white light, really as long as you can, get lots of white light on your skin, do all the things, take vitamin D, all the things that really help you to reduce anxiety, take some magnesium, some zinc, lots of natural opportunities to really give our body what it needs to kind of be in its full best working order. When it comes down to the binge eating, again, you have to figure out, what is it? What is that cue that makes you go, okay? Because it is a choice. You know that and I know that. I knew that when I was dealing with my, there's a choice. It's a choice. So what am I avoiding feeling? Or what am I trying to reward feeling wise? What am I using this binge eating to manage? Because that's what it is. That's what you're doing. It could be, I feel unbelievably alone. I feel so lonely that I just don't want to feel lonely anymore. And then your amygdala instinct area of your brain goes, ching, it's no problem. I can sort this, because the amygdala isn't higher consciousness. It's not like the area of higher thought. It's not prefrontal cortex area. It is old instinct. It's a have sex, fight, eat, drink. Usually it's hedonism as well. That's the area. And it says, hey, we have a solution for this big empty void that you call loneliness. We'll fill it. And so food for the amygdala is an answer, right? It says, I can stop this void feeling this awful for you. So it looks at loneliness and it interprets it as emptiness, and it says, well, I can fill it, and it fills it. So again, if you can just take a step back from the behavior and say, well, that makes sense. I can see how that binge eating would occur because I actually feel really lonely and it's filling it. Or it might be that you're really bored. And again, that's interpreted as like just a sense of, like there's not really any point. So it gives you point. Or it might be, I'm angry and I don't want to sit with this feeling and look beneath it. So I'm going to cover it. So my job in therapy is to help you to go, oh my God, this hurts. This feeling that I've got right now, it hurts. And you know what? I'm not going to go and carry out the behavior because I'm not listening to what I need to hear. And until I stop and I still and I listen, it will keep happening. It's really hard to be present with pain, but the pain isn't there to harm you. It's just there to teach you. You go off to binge eat because you're afraid of this feeling that you're trying to avoid, erase, deny. But that feeling is far less damaging to you than your binge eating. You might not believe that, but I promise you, because the feeling is educational. The feeling is fully there, so you learn. And until you say, in the moment, as the binge eating comes on, okay, this is my cue, this is when usually I would get up and I would go and put all that food out and just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. But I'm just going to close that door and I'm going to stop and I'm going to be still with this. What am I feeling? And I'm going to take a journal and I'm just going to write it down. I'm going to excavate those feelings. I'm going to see them on paper. What has happened today that's triggered me? What is going on in my wider world that's causing this pain? You know, what is it within me that's unresolved? And that's how we start moving through those important moments to achieve change. And it's a lifelong journey. So where you are now, the minute you decide not to continue that behavior, that binge eating behavior, that's over. You can do that right now. It can stop. That's it. That's what happens with alcoholics. That's what happens with anorexics. That's what happens with binge eaters, bulimics. You just stop. You go, right, I'm going to stop. But then the work begins. That's when the work begins. And it's good, even though it's painful, to acknowledge that it's going to cause pain initially. But the minute that you decide to stop throwing away your opportunity to really dig deep into what it is that's brought you to this point, whether that's feeling hurt or humiliated, feeling rejected, dealing with grief, feeling abandoned. There are so many reasons why we go and we externalize our anxieties and use other things to prop us up, even though it causes us deep pain. No one chooses to be a binge eater because it's good. No one chooses to be an alcoholic because it's fun. No one chooses to become a heroin dependent because they're having a great time. It's always to do with pain. Until you name your pain, you can't move through it. So that's where you need to go. Not over there to the biscuit tin. Here, right here. Start writing it down. Obviously, if you can get some help, get some help. But you can do a lot of that work yourself, I promise you. And again, it's just a deflection. You're deflecting. There is something that needs solving in your world. It may be that you're lonely. That means you don't need to go and eat food. You need to start creating connection. You might feel like you've not achieved what you should have achieved and you feel like you're a failure. You're not a failure. You're just on your road to success. So don't deflect. How are you going to put those foundations in place so that you achieve what you want to achieve? You may have dealt with grief and you can't bring that person back. But that's okay because that person's still with you and you can grow from the knowledge and understanding of the experience instead of deflecting it and not having the richness of that pain because it has meaning. All those things begin when you say, I feel that feeling, I'm going to change the way I respond to it. And right now I'm going to sit with it. There would be the things that I'd say, but obviously other people have other ideas and you will need more than just this to get through that. but it's totally achievable. Drives me mad when people say, once you've been anorexic, you'll spend the rest of your life, or no, not true at all. You can be perfectly healthy and think of food as fuel and never give it a second's thought. Simple as that. Ari, your crime stuff. Do you not think that researching and being connected with this kind of gruesome murders affects your psyche? No, I think everybody has a different coping strategy. So it's a bit like saying, when I research crime, but I've lived the life within that reality since I began my career. So I've worked with people who've had children murdered, I've worked with people who've been violently assaulted, I've worked with sexual trauma, sexual abuse, child molestation. So actually when you work with that all the time, when it comes down to researching others' crimes, you feel a step away, if that makes sense. And the reason that I like talking about crime and criminal behaviour and kind of exploring the psychology of it is, firstly, I genuinely think that you're more empathic as a human. It tends to be that research into those areas, when you look at who watches crime TV, tends to be more female and very empathic. I think there's a part of me that always wants to imagine what it was like for that person, and I feel really committed when I'm doing that research to how do I understand the perpetrator, but how do I bring to life the legacy for the person who was killed. So it's a bit like within therapy, you don't always get everything as a win, but on the journey you hope that the person who's going on it with you, even though you can't heal that particular issue for them, it's got to be done themselves, you're always living in this position of hope. So even at the end when there's been gruesome murders, I think the hope always exists in well, what can we learn and how do we give legacy to the person who died? That's the way I always approach it. So I don't ever get kind of down by that, if that makes sense. But then as well, I'm somebody who's spent my life working in therapy and creating quite a lot of paradigms to be able to manage that, and dealt with personal trauma, which I think helps me as well. Now, my job in those, when I'm doing it, is just how do I tell the story and not make the families feel that it was badly done, if that makes sense. That's the only thing that I want to make sure that happens. Hi Emma, sorry to bother you. You do not need to, everybody apologises for bothering me. Imagine, I'd just be sat here not doing it if I was bothered. You're welcome to it. Oh, sorry to see about your lad. Hope he's feeling a bit better now. Yeah, I had such rage, guys. I had such rage. I'm really glad I didn't get to him before the police did. My question is, any tips or tricks to help calm my anxiety? My anxiety's been getting worse over recent months. I've been doing 4-7-8 breathing, well done. After asking how to do that, and a support worker told me to try it. But my anxiety has recently been getting worse and turning my stomach and giving me migraines. A lot of people don't know that you can get tummy migraines, you can get abdominal migraines. So I didn't realise that till my son suffered from them as a child. So actually, if you suffer from migraines, the gut is very linked anyway. I'm due to go rock climbing tomorrow for the first time as part of a new support group with people with mental health and anxiety. My anxiety kicked into full gear today, and my IBS, migraines and racing thoughts. Any other tips or little tricks to help me calm my anxiety? First of all, brilliant about the fact that you're going on your first rock climb. I think that's bloody fantastic. Well done you. And throwing yourself in at the deep end, that's the way to manage it. So obviously IBS, migraines, anxiety, massively linked. If you're willing to drink kefir, obviously you can't get it tonight, but I'd really like you to start drinking kefir. Pete, will you just put it online so there's a link to it? I really mean this. I'm somebody who has suffered from migraines. A lot of people do. You either get migraine or you don't. It's one or the other. I can't believe it, but loads of people don't even suffer from headache. Can't believe that. I thought everyone suffered from headache. I get very rare migraines now, but I thought that everybody had headache. Apparently it's like only half people have headache. So when you've got migraine, anything to do with gut as well, it's all linked. It's really important. So the more you can settle your stomach, your belly, that will help. So the microbiomes in kefir are definitely linked to reduction in anxiety. They're linked to better gut health, which in turn is linked to pretty much everywhere in our body. So I would genuinely look at doing that. You can grow your own and do it in milk products, or if you're vegan, you can still do it in other oat milks and etc. You've got to do it differently. It won't be as nice, but you can do it, or you can buy it. You can also buy it, but it's quite expensive, or it's cheap to do your own. So look at how you can control your gut in that way. Then I would do something like grounding. You know, you've only got a few hours now between now and then. Like I say, nerves and excitement are exactly the same, just one is interpreted positively and one is interpreted negatively. So instead of saying you're nervous, start saying to yourself, I'm excited. I can't believe how far I've come. I've struggled with anxiety, and yet I'm about to go and meet a group of people to go rock climbing. Look at how far I've come. Look at how I am nailing this. Look at how I am seeing and feeling my anxiety and using it positively and with purpose. That's what your mind affirmation needs to become. Then in future, I'd start having kefir every single day. I'd say that to every single one of you. I think we all need to take it. We are too clean in our society. It's disgusting how clean we are. Like, we need germs, we need microbiomes in our belly, we need to stop killing everything around us that's good for us, you know? One of the reasons that they believe that there are many more people called with celiac disease is because we don't have the natural occurring parasite, the hookworm, in our gut. And when they've done tests in Australia where people were given hookworms, actually orally, and then they were given at the end of the trial, when they all felt so much better, the opportunity to get rid of them by taking an antiparasitic, none of them took it because they weren't having the same problems with their celiacs. So what I'm trying to say is a lot of the stuff that we do in modern life is bad for us. Secondly, you're going to be anxious because you've had a year of absolute trauma, whether your feelings are that's okay or otherwise. Mine is that it's not okay. But you are at a point now where you've got your stuff together to a point where you're going to go climbing with a group of new people who are going to become buds, and you're going to conquer so many fears. So I know what you're going to feel. You're going to feel that stress in your back, in your head, in your neck, definitely in your lower back. So really hot bath. We want a really hot bath. And I'm talking when you get in the bath, I want it to be one of those like, oh, am I actually burning alive? You know, just where you can only manage it. And I want you to sit in that bath for a good 15 minutes, even though it's overwhelming. And I want you to get out of your bath, I want you to go downstairs, and I want you to read. I don't want any screens anywhere. I just want you to read. And I want you to constantly read, just taking your mind away from things. And then after about an hour to 2 hours, about 2 hours without a doubt, your body will have cooled to a point where you'll be so sleepy and you'll get a good night's sleep. Then in the morning, remember the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. I say it all the time because it's simple. When the nerves start coming, look around and say 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things that I can touch, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste, and just do it. If you can find something that reminds you of good times in your home, it might be a little trinket, put it in your pocket, and whenever you have those rise of feelings tomorrow, pick it out and think about something really positive that happened to you in your past. Anchoring works really effectively, grounding works really effectively, so try those as well. How to help my teenager son who is clingy and gets angry when I don't give him the attention. There'll be loads of mums and dads going, oh my gosh, I want a teenage son who's so clingy and needy. Because like so many of them get to that point and you're like, will I see you this year? Because like obviously you're just doing other things. But understandably, one of the things that's happened in the past 12 months is it's gone from kids being with the mates, getting on with their life, maturing and growing in school, having those ordinary experiences that every single child should have and should never have stopped having. And it's been taken away. And then they've been told, by the way, you might just kill everybody in your family. And on top of that, you're dealing with testosterone, puberty, educational fears, feeling alienation around peers because of distance that's occurred, and generally not knowing whether they can trust the world around them. And what do you stand for? Well, you are this huge anchor of safety. You symbolize everything that is still okay in this toxic world with such toxicity levels at the moment that it's hard to appreciate if you imagine what that must be like at that age. So even though this is really challenging for you, it's because he is dealing with anxiety and fear, and you represent safety, tolerance, and love. And they are important expressions for him to know exist and that he can consistently depend on. And the irony is that part of you is like, I just need you to stop being so clingy. But if you do that, that will just make him want more of that, because then the very thing that he's trying to achieve will essentially be denied. And when it is denied, you're noticing that it's turning into anger. Because if I can't control my environment, then at least I can control the way that I react to you when you're denying me the thing that I want in my environment. So first off, he's a teenager. He will understand that you have to do other things, but maybe you need to express it in a more clear way. You can do this by going on a walk with him, because you want to do it side to side. In conflict work, it's always better. And you just want to broach it with all honesty and be like, you are the most important person to me in the world. I love you more dearly than anything. But when you want my attention constantly, I will always fail you, because I have to do other things like our life admin, ensuring our mortgage is paid, going to work, cooking meals. There are all these things that I have to do, not because I would choose to do them if I could just chill with you, but because they are realities in my life. But if you hear that as me rejecting you, then I'm always going to fail. So you let him see that the responsibility he's giving you is somewhere where you cannot succeed. And you enable him to understand that that responsibility isn't one that you're ever going to want, because you'll constantly be failing within it. And then express to him, like, what could be a fair deal? So, okay, I've got this, and this. And this is the amount of time that I've got every day that I can just absolutely devote to you. And that might be 45 minutes watching your favorite Netflix box set together. But it's just for you guys. It's just for you. And he knows that if he can just let you get on with this, and this, you're going to devote that to him. It might be playing a board game, it might be going for a walk, it doesn't really matter. But what you're doing is you're kind of bringing it into the reality. I'm going to talk to you like you're a responsible young developing adult, and I'm going to give you the reality of what it's like to be a parent, and I'm going to reinforce how much I love and adore you, but that there are limitations to my life because I have all these other things to do, none of them which deny your absolute worth and value to me. And then also talk about the anger and say, look, anger is a shadow emotion, it's a surface, it's over. And so to take me the other day, when I had that rage, it wasn't rage. I was really scared for my child, right? So it wasn't rage, it was fear. Whereas with your son, the anger might be that he's dealing with high anxiety because of what's happened in the past year. So he might not know really what's going on, because as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, a lot of young people, they are less emotionally literate than they were at 9 or 10 because of the developing brain. So he might not even know. It's just confusing for him. All he knows is that he wants you because you make him feel safe. And it's like bringing those conversations out, because from there, he knows that you're solid, you're soothing, you love him, you make time for him, but you can't answer every need because you have all these other needs that need answering, that also are about getting sure that he has that foundation. Because without all those other things being answered, there won't be that foundation. So that would be really helpful. Also, avoid negative enforcement. Do not have a go. If he's angry, don't respond to it. Honestly, don't respond. You're not going to escalate. You're not going to involve. You're going to let him go, rant, rage. And then when he's calm and he's chilled and he comes over, you congratulate him for being chilled out. I know some people won't agree with that, but believe me, it's the most effective way of parenting there is. And then you'll be like, I'm really glad you've calmed down. Do you want to talk now? Because we're going to starve all that negative behaviour and we're going to really reinforce that good behaviour. It's so much better to do compassionate parenting. Whatever it is that's going on for him, it's real and it's big. And remember, when you were a young person, things felt overwhelming and difficult at times. And we need a light, like a parent, who can guide us. Hi. I feel I've lost all hope after being told my therapist can't work with me anymore after nearly a month. They say it's because I was under section in the last year, but I've been discharged from the NHS. Does this mean it's not possible to ever get private therapy? If you've been in hospital under section in the past, I'm slowly giving up and totally lost now, so grateful for any advice, please. No idea what that's about. Not with you, by the way. No, you can have therapy. I don't understand why. I would imagine what is happening is the particular therapist that you've got doesn't feel that you are a client that they feel they have the right skills to work with. So it does happen that some therapists will choose not to work with people who are suicidal, have high levels of self-harm. They, as a private practitioner, don't feel that that's their comfort zone, and that's completely okay. I arguably don't understand why you've come away feeling that you might have been denied that therapy because you were under a section. Lots of people have been under a section. I think it's brilliant that you've gone elected to have some private work. So now it's more about saying, okay, I've wasted a bit of cash on a therapist who should have asked those questions in the first session. I mean, what you're meant to do in a first session is contract. At least you should if you're a, in my opinion, good practitioner, whether you're a therapist or a psychologist or anybody really working in that. It should be a, let's talk about what this is going to feel like. Let's talk about what's gone on in your past, let's talk about risk factors, because I need to know whether you are a suicide risk. I need to know whether you are somebody who's had serious self-harm issues. I need to know whether you're an alcoholic. I need to know all those things, because we're going to contract and then make a decision on how our therapy is going to look. And also so that I can be aware of any issues that might be provoked if we're talking about something really traumatic, Need to know if you've been a serious self-harmer, if we're going to be talking about your sexual abuse. I need to know about your suicidal ideation in the past, if we're going to be going through some challenging thing. You need to know that. No, all you need to do now is look on the BACP, that would be for therapy, or look at clinical psychologists who specialise in areas that you want to talk about. And then I'd phone a few or I'd email a few, and I'd get the feeling for, do I think I can connect with this person? And if you do, then I'd ask them for a 10-minute phone call for free. I don't think that any practitioner should not offer that. 10-minute phone call, figure out whether you think you could like them, whether you could sit down and be with them and feel present and say what you need to say, and take it from there. It's not on you, it's on the therapist. I don't know why it took them 4 sessions to tell you that, but like I said, you know how it is. You go to one hairdresser, you come out looking $1 million. You go to another and you come out looking like you've come from the 1980s, It has happened to me a few times. How do you deal with life frustration? I think the last 18 months has actually been a test of any of us having life frustration, isn't it? It's just been the biggest experiment of how do we survive frustration at a level that feels inhuman. Life frustration is actually progression in disguise. So the frustration that you feel is not there to teach you frustration, it's there to teach you progress. You're feeling frustrated because there's a lesson in it. What movement needs to occur? Frustration, feeling trapped, feeling stuck, they come from unresolved movement. There is something that needs to change. So to use the old quote, if all you ever do is what you've always done, and all you're going to get is what you've always got, and that's the key. What do you really know needs to change? Because often we'll sit and be like, I don't know what I can do. There's nothing I can do. This is a constant that I will hear, where I'll say to somebody, let's think about opportunities instead of limitations, and live like, there's nothing I can do. Of course there is. I mean, we can do whatever we choose to do within reason, and we can change whatever we need to change immediately or over time without doubt. But we can't do any of that without a plan. So when I work with frustration, and certainly I've done a lot of that with myself, and it's revealed a lot about what I'm going to do with my life, because I realised that in the last 18 months, have woken up to a whole new way of seeing the world and what that means for the way I'm going to live my life. And for you, it's going to be doing the same. So frustration can become an epiphany. It can become something powerfully changing and transformative. But it begins when you go, let's get strategic. Let's sit down. What am I frustrated with in life? It might be my job. We can change it. It might be my partner. We can challenge the relationship or change it. It might be I'm bored with the way that my family lives. Again, we can change it. You can always change what you know. You can't change I'm just so frustrated. You have to be strategic. That's how I do it. Usually, those feelings are just teaching you purpose in disguise. It's hard, but I promise you it's worth doing that exercise and sitting down and confronting it. I want to get back into exercising. Oh my God, amen to that. Like literally, it's so hard, isn't it? It's bizarre. The last 12 to 18 months, I'm a proper exercise person. Like every single day, go into the garage, work out. And then like, honestly, the last few months, I feel like I got to a stage where I just went, oh, I'm never going to be able to leave my house. I'm literally going to work in my kitchen for the rest of eternity. And like the exhaustion of just like, So I'm completely with you. It's really hard at the moment. I just want to acknowledge, I empathize. I want to get back into exercising, but I feel like the health anxiety holds me back. I don't like feeling out of breath or my heart racing, so I tend to avoid exercise, but I really want to get back into shape and lose lockdown weight. Any tips to move past this? So, you know the only way to move past it is to face it. That's it. Exposure is the only way. There is no other resolution for it. You have to deal with the unmanageably difficult feelings and still do it. How can you do that best? Well, arguably, I would say instead of thinking about going on a massive run, which is going to be overwhelming and probably make you feel that hyperventilation feeling that you can get, I would just say to myself, right, Emma says, or whoever says, that getting outside in sunlight for at least an hour a day is really important. And I'm going to put some really great music on, like 80s pop, 90s pop, bit of the old cheese. And I'm going to just briskly walk for an hour every single day. And you're just going to make a deal with yourself that that's going to be enough right now. And then you might, in 2 or 3 weeks, say to yourself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go for a brisk walk. And then later on, I'm just going to do 15 squats, just 15 squats. Or I'm going to do a plank. And you're just going to build in some really simple strategies that don't overwhelm you. Like, oh, go to the gym, get a personal trainer, spend 2 hours working out on every machine while surrounded by people. That's not where you are now. But you have to expose yourself to it. If you can find a buddy to do that with you, that'd be great. If there's somebody you can kind of find in your social network who feels the same, wants to lose some of those lockdown pounds that every single one of us has put on, it's just the way it's been. But smaller incremental steps before the big shift. And with the health anxiety, again, health anxiety I always think can be treated similarly to OCD, which is where you want the exposure response model, where you're going to expose yourself to your fears and feelings, and you're just going to keep going through it in spite of the fact that you're having it. Obviously, breathing exercises will help you to relax. But for me, when it comes down to getting past this, how do I get back into it? You have to do it in a way that feels like it's not too much of an imposition on your life. Exercise programs fail when it's an imposition on your life. It has to fit in. Now, there are apps like WW, which obviously, if you want to lose weight and exercise, they've got like this 360 stuff now that they do. So obviously that would be an option. My app's out, but it's broken at the moment. The videos aren't playing. It is being sorted finally, but I'm not a coder, so it's been challenging. But nonetheless, it'll be out again soon. I mean, it's out, but it'll be updated again soon, and it'll be back to normal. But just remember, you're completely normal for feeling these excesses in health anxiety. It's been really hard. See you soon, chaps. My next YouTube's out Wednesday, so if you have